Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining. A very warm welcome to South Africa's 5th Annual International Women's Day webinar. And this year's theme is for all women and girls, rights, equality, and empowerment. I have too many screens overlapping. So my name is Catherine Hall, and I'm the Director of International Programs at South Africa, and I'm based in the UK. Just in the theme of adding where we all are based, so please continue. It's really interesting to see where everyone's dialing in from if you add that to the chat. And I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. We have some great speakers lined up. So just a little bit of an introduction for me, and then we'll go straight into the different speakers' presentations. So International Women's Day is celebrated on the 8th of March each year. And obviously today's not the 8th of March, but we're running it slightly early. And it's an occasion that's been marked around the globe for over a century. And it's an occasion to both celebrate the roles and achievements of women and also to highlight some of the challenges that are faced by women and that require our attention. And these challenges still exist for millions of women around the globe, and achieving equality amongst women in all aspects of life is more crucial than ever, especially if we want to create prosperous economies and a healthy planet. So this year's theme under the United Nations calls for action that can unlock equal rights, power and opportunities for all, and a feminist future where no one is left behind. And central to this vision is empowering the next generation, youth, particularly young women and adolescent girls, as catalysts for lasting change. So under the banner of the UN's Women's Global Campaign to mark the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action for All Women and Girls, this year's International Women's Day is a call to take action in 3 areas: advancing women's and girls' rights, fight relentlessly for women's and girls' full range of human rights, challenging all forms of violence, discrimination, and exploitation, promoting gender equality, address systemic barriers, dismantle patriarchy, transform entrenched inequities, and elevate the voices of marginalized women and girls, including young people, to ensure inclusivity and empowerment. And thirdly, fostering empowerment, redefine power structures by ensuring inclusive access to education, employment, leadership, and decision-making spaces. Prioritize opportunities for young women and girls to lead and innovate. Because this year's International Women's Day falls on the weekend, we're celebrating 2 days early, as mentioned. So this webinar has become an important event for South Africa since we hosted our first online conference during the COVID pandemic. Oh, and I've just jumped to the wrong slide. Oh, there we are, back to the... And we're happy to continue hosting this and bringing people around the world together now in the 5th year. And the webinar brings together voices of women and youth from Africa and from our own program countries as well. We've brought together 4 different young entrepreneurs and experts. So without further ado, I'll start introducing you to the speakers. First up, we have Wissal Ben Moussa from Morocco. She's a co-founder of From Sand to Green. And then we have Sumaya Mohammad from Somalia and Ireland, a young activist and Associate General Secretary for Somalis for Development. Then we'll hear from Nina Mbah from Nigeria, and as a co-founder of African Climate Stories. And then we will finish with our very own Sara Demissew, Gender and Nutrition Advisor in South Africa, Ethiopia. And just before we start, so I'll unshare my screen in a second and let Wissal share her slides. Just a note on Q&A, please feel free to post all your questions on the chat, and we'll collate them for all the speakers, and then we'll address them at the end of all the presentations. So please start putting your comments and questions in the chat as we go along. So, right, let me unshare my screen, and if Wissal, you can try and share your slides, that would be great. And I'll start to introduce you if that's okay. Super. So we have, while Wissal gets her slides on the screen, we have like to welcome again Wissal Ben Moussa. So Wissal Ben Moussa is the co-founder and Chief Agriculture Officer at From Sand to Green. This is a French-based NGO whose mission is to regenerate degraded arid lands and create thriving ecosystems through regenerative agriculture. So with an expertise in agro-food engineering and innovation management, Wissal leads efforts at Sand to Green to restore soil health, boost biodiversity, and balance sustainability with economic growth. Moroccan by birth, she's passionate about combating desertification and developing solutions that can restore nature and support communities. She spoke about her work at Gender Caucus during the COP summit in Riyadh and talked about shining a light on the power of women in agriculture, not just as farmers, but as leaders, innovators, and change makers. So over to you, Wissal.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and I'm very, very excited to be here with you today and share with you part of my journey that I hope could be inspiring for some of you, or many of you. A few years ago, that's me, I'm Wissal Ben Moussa, and a few years ago, I made a choice that changed my life. I returned to my family's land in Morocco, in a region where agriculture was seen as a struggle rather than an opportunity, a region in the desert of Morocco, the very south of Morocco. The land was dry, the soil was exhausted, and the challenges overwhelming. So I wanted to introduce the talk on this story first, and then talk to you a bit about this decision to return to my family's home. I worked in the corporate world for a while, and then as many young men and women in our generation, I realized that what I was doing was not in balance with what I want to do in life, with my ethics, with how I wanted to be more impactful in what I do every day. And this is what kind of created this need for me to make a change, to do something. I'm a food engineer. I love food. I wanted to stay in this, food value chain. And I just asked myself, okay, where can I be the more impactful? And naturally, I thought, okay, let's start from the beginning of this value chain. The beginning of it is farming. I remembered we had a farming land that wasn't farmed anymore in the very dry south of Morocco. And this is how the journey started. I was in this place. So, like many of the young people around us today, I love nature. I'm a mountain hiker. I love my dogs, and I'm a choir singer. Actually, I've been in Cork for the Cork Choir Festival some years ago. This is how I got introduced to Ireland. And so back to my land, I saw potential. I saw a place that could be an open sky laboratory for regeneration. And this was back in 2016, 17. And I was hit back with reality. I was hit back with global warming. I was hit back with insecurity. And this is just a picture that shows that I think this is one of the first picture that really gave me like my biggest slap on the face. Africa, you could see this is a light picture, a night picture of the world. And you could see that, Africa, which is the continent that has the most resources in the world, the continent that holds a lot of, of the population, is the continent that has the least resource today. So that means that there is some really great instabilities when it comes to how resources are used around the world. we could see here another other map that shows how the heat is and the dryness and the drought is impacting the world, and you can see that half of the of Africa is going through a huge desertification. So back to my farm. This is how I saw the potential, started the Domaine Zaha, which is the farm where I am today, a huge open sky lab experiment in agroforestry, soil regeneration, sustainable practices in very, very arid climates. But here's what's most important for me. I didn't do it alone. I mean, I had a huge support system coming from my mothers, my grandmothers, my sisters, my fellow entrepreneurs, but they played a key role in this journey. Whether it was sharing knowledge, working the land, supporting me and supporting each other through the struggles of entrepreneurship, I learned not the hard way, but the most beautiful way how women can come together and that we can not cultivate the soil in a, and be farmers in a very, very man-oriented domain, but we can also cultivate change. This is how Domaine Zaha was born, where we created food production. We did lots of agroforestry training. We did some seed selection with a women group. We have transformation unit where we work with villagers, women-led transformation units. This is just some of the pictures of all the groups and all the works that we've been doing around here. And then some years ago, as my work in regenerative agriculture grew, I realized something bigger. Like, I want to scale. I want scale in impact. I didn't know how to do it, but I knew it required innovation. That's why I co-founded Sand to Green, by this very, scaling idea. How to feed, let's dream big. How to feed. So I was doing good by my own farm, doing pretty good, building resilience step by step with my community around me, with like my 2-3 villages where I live. And then I was like, no, I want to do bigger. I want to feed 9.5 billion people by 2050. And this is how I co-founded Sand to Green, a company that is based on regenerative agriculture, which is a booming market when it comes to the financial market today. It's worth billions. And I was like, okay, there's opportunity. Let's find the right person. Let's take this opportunity. Got back to France, to some of my friends who I went to school with, who were also, being in this social and green entrepreneurship, circle. And we created Sand to Green, where we aim to transform arid land with to green parcels and data-packed green parcel. At Sand to Green, we prove that deserts are not dead zones. They are opportunities that can be unlocked. We are using regenerative design, water-efficient technology, community-based model, and that's really important to restore landscape, try to boost local economies, but all, create mitigation and kind of fight climate change. I don't like the word fight, because I don't think as human we need to be fighting anything, and not nature. We need to work hand in hand in nature. So I love to say that we don't fight climate change. We work hand in hand with climate, whatever changing this climate wants to be or needs to be. And this is agriculture is not only about food. Agriculture is about sovereignty. It's about giving people. It's about creating jobs. It's about restoring ecosystems. And when we talk about ecosystem, it's not only fauna and floras and animals. Those are super important. They are the basis of everything, but humans are part of ecosystems. So agriculture, it's about, for us, is about sovereignty. It's about giving people, and especially women, and we'll get to it in that last part of the presentation, giving the people, men and women, tools to reclaim their land, to reclaim their livelihood, and to reclaim their future. Because as hard as aridification is going, as hard as climate change is hitting big parts of Africa, we don't want to leave. We want to stay here. We want to create resilience, and we want to create hubs of of um, of food sovereignty for our, to the future generation. It's just a picture of us in and one of our farms in Morocco. And one thing I learned on this journey is women lifting women is not just an idea, it's a necessity. When a woman thrives in agriculture, she feeds a community. I fed my community during COVID. I fed around 200 households with the farmers I work with. When a woman becomes an entrepreneur, she creates jobs and opportunity. I worked with men and women in villages to create generating income activities, related to agriculture. And when a woman stands up for the land, she safeguards the future, because we are, steward of lands, but we are also stewards of life. And I think it's important that women get to have back the space they had in agriculture. The reality, though, is that we face barriers to land ownership. We face barriers to funding, to leadership opportunities. This is why it's important to stay allies and to be each other's allies, to be each other's investors, to be each other's champions, whether it's through mentorship, partnership, and the work we're doing with all the women around us. We must actively try to create spaces where more women can step forward and show more women what to do. So for me, that meant supporting other women and men in regenerative agriculture. You can see there is more men than women, but we're getting there. I have a whole project, based on that is solely working with women farming in 2 of the oases in the south of Morocco. Couldn't find really good pictures, but we're getting there. I'm pushing the agenda of making women-based initiative the core of what we're doing. So it's supporting women and men in regenerative agriculture, whether it's helping them start their own farm, connecting them with resources, or sometimes just reminding them that their own vision matter. And this is an important last part for me, which is we talked about empowering population to achieve justice. We're talking about land sovereignty. We're talking about food and water sovereignty. And it's important that we start from the bottom up, that if we want to empower a community, we need to empower them from the bottom up, understanding their need. And the majority of the time, the need of a local community comes from the women. And it's the community-led initiatives come from the women and are sustainable because there are women in those communities who safeguard the work that we're trying to do. This is some work we're doing around with amazing women in villages that are leaders of their communities. Those are pictures from Senegal, where we're working with 2 women-led agricultural communities into creating more resilience and trying to get them into the framework of the compensation market when it comes, carbon compensation, biodiversity compensation, credits, etc. And this is also something that is really, really important, that the more we work in communities, the more we realize that we need to, in Africa, to decolonize agriculture. And to decolonize agriculture, we need to be reclaiming our traditional knowledge and our traditional practices. We need to promote agroecology like we knew how to do, like our ancestor knew how to do, of course, with some new practices, new technologies. Nature is a bit changing on us, but this all comes with empowerment. This all comes with supporting local control, with supporting decision making. What works in a village near my farm in Morocco wouldn't work in a beautiful village in Kenya or in Senegal or in Mauritania. The practices may be the same, I mean, the agricultural practices, but not the social and dynamics. But women are always at the heart of this social dynamic. So today, I just want to leave you with one last thought, to say that each one of us has the power to, let's make a pun, to plant or to seed revolution. Whether you're an entrepreneur, try to invest in women-led projects. If you're a farmer, share your knowledge with other women, with another woman who wants to start her journey in farming, and break those glass ceilings. If you're a leader, an investor, you gotta create opportunities for women to own, for women to shape the future of agriculture, because agriculture is the foundation of life. Women are the foundation of life, and when women lead agriculture, we don't just grow food, we grow possibilities, and we grow legacies. We grow a better world for the next generation. So thank you for listening to me today, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Wissal. You're getting lots of reactions. I do like the little icons that are on Zoom. That was great and really insightful, and a great call to action at the end there as well. So, Sumaya, do you want to start sharing your screen slides? So we have up next we have Sumaya. Just a reminder, in case you missed it earlier, if you've got questions or comments for Wissal, please add them in the chat, and we'll take all the questions at the end as Q&A for all the presenters. So we have next up Sumaya Mohammad. So a little bit about Sumaya, and then before I hand over to you, Sumaya. So as a 12-year-old student at Cork, Educate Together, Sumaya Mohammad told the Irish Parliament that she was absolutely furious with their inaction on climate change. So since the address to the Irish Parliament's Climate Action Committee in 2019, her passion for climate justice has not receded. And at the age of 16, she was a youth ambassador to the COP27 summit in Egypt and became a co-founder of the Students' Climate Action Network, or SCAN. And with SCAN, she received a highly commended Young Environmentalist Award for the project Pull the Brakes, Climate Action Organizers. Perfect. That's, if you leave it there, then that's working now. Excellent. As a first-year student of law at University College Cork and a Quercus Active Citizenship Scholar, Sumaya is also the Associate General Secretary for the global organization Somalis for Sustainability. And that, I think, if you're ready, I'll hand over to you, Sumaya, to take us through your presentation.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be talking to you all today regarding climate justice and the intersectionality between gender justice and a myriad of other issues. So I guess just a bit about me. Like the lovely introduction, I'm a youth advocate for climate justice from Cork in Somalia. I'm a first-year law student in University College Cork and the first year rep for the Environmental Society this year. And like you said, I co-founded the Students' Climate Action Network, which is a network of students and teachers campaigning for radical and systemic justice from the government on climate change and climate youth activists. So, and as you said, Associate General Secretary for Somalis for Sustainability and a couple of other things. But I guess starting from the beginning of how I even got involved in any of these type of things, it all kind of began from here. So this is March 15th, 2019. So before I co-founded the Students' Climate Action Network, the first time I ever really learned about what the climate crisis was when I was 12. It was December of 2018, and I remember one of my teachers coming in and saying, if anybody's interested in anything to do with the environment or anything to do with nature, come into this room and we'll all just have a chat. And like the speaker said before us, a lot of climate activists or a lot of people interested in these type of things already have a passion for nature or appreciation for nature. So I really liked hiking, swimming and whatnot. So I was like, okay, I'll go. But I didn't really know about the climate crisis per se. We learned about the climate crisis and I think it just snowballed from there. I felt really overwhelmed and, as you said, quite frustrated because I was like, if this is an actual issue, why isn't anybody doing anything about it? But then a lot of us in that room felt like that. So we were like, why don't we do something about it? So every Wednesday after school and at lunchtimes, we'd meet and it was like 7, 12 to 14-year-olds. And then we ended up organizing this massive climate protest in Cork. And we thought if we were lucky, maybe around 300 people would show up, but then 5,000 people came and we were like, what the heck? And it kind of just really went from there. Here, as you can see again, this was one of the biggest ones. I think there's up to 9,000 people there. And even just as a note, you can see the majority of people in the climate movement actually are young women and girls. Which is just something to know that I'll touch on later on. But yeah, it was insane. And we kind of snowballed from there. We got a lot of speaking opportunities from SCAN to speak on climate to schools. And our main focus was education. That's what kind of made my main focus climate education, making people ensure that they know that they're entitled to receiving a climate education. And so that's how I kind of became an advisor to the Climate Justice Research Project and to the Climate Action Leaving Cert course, because I think if people know that their lives are about to change, if people know that the climate crisis is happening, everybody deserves to know exactly what's going to be changing, and thus be entitled to be a recipient of climate education. And I know that I wouldn't even be here today if I didn't receive a climate action short course in my junior cycle. So that's what I'm really passionate about. So I guess I just want to touch on what is activism and why is it important? Activism is taking action, and it's so important for young people to be taking action on issues that they find important to them, whether it be in regards to gender justice, whether it be in regards to disability rights. Finding your niche and what you're passionate about is so important. I found that I was really passionate about climate action, but before that, I know that both of my parents are human rights advocates. So I kind of grew up with the mentality of it's not okay to just watch people's rights be abused and just be a bystander in it. You have to act and take action. And I think that's why it's so important. It can create so much change at such high or local levels. I mean, with SCAN, we started at a local level and then it transcended to a national organization. And then, like you said earlier, I became one of the SCAN delegates to COP27, which I'll touch on later on. But yeah, so Conference of the Parties. So that's what COP stands for. It's a UNFCCC climate conference, and it happens every single year. I went this year again with the UCC delegation, and the first COP was in 1995 in Berlin. We're now about to reach COP 30, which is happening in Brazil. Not a lot has changed. I think it's very kind of daunting at times to be seeing these type of things, knowing that this is the 30th year and yet climate crisis is becoming much more of a serious issue. And the fact that this isn't unprecedented, we know all the facts, we know all the solutions. Climate scientists have been reporting these type of things for years, but nothing has changed. And that's because of a myriad of systemic issues. It's not all individual. But I guess, yeah, just to touch on it, United Nations, UNFCCC stands for the United Nations Climate Change Convention, and it's where world leaders come together to discuss climate change and their progress. And world leaders, universities, scientists, researchers. I went this year. Here we can see some of my colleagues, Keen Walsh, whose actually his focus is on agriculture, and Robinson, who came with gender justice. She came with Plan International, and Fran Rogan, who's a research scientist. So the outcomes of this COP were daunting, to say the least. We came up with the new global climate finance goal, which would be mobilizing at least 300 billion annually. However, it must be noted that this is not enough. The proposed kind of margin that we need to actually be able to adapt and mitigate the climate crisis is around 5 trillion. The goal is not legally binding either, and it came down to 300 billion annually. And I have some notes to read for here for you guys regarding one of the meetings. So one thing to note about the COP meetings is that it's actually quite difficult to access any of these negotiations, especially as a young person. I had a party overflow badge alongside a lot of my other colleagues, and it's very difficult to access a lot of rooms in these type of spaces. But then I was at this G77, which is a coalition and China meeting. And G77, I'm sure a lot of you guys know, is just a coalition of the kind of lesser developed countries and China. And this was one of their meetings when one of the countries was proposing 250 billion, I'm pretty sure, annually, which is just absurd. And the lesser developed countries stated that they call for a count of order on behalf of the LDCs. This paper does not give us what we're looking for. This paper does not give us a share, and we're not ready to associate with this paper. And we call for a suspension of this meeting, and we'll walk out of this room, and maybe you can call us back when you're done. That was really, really crazy to just even observe, seeing these kind of huge global spaces, people still using their advocacy and activism to fight for something to fight for their rights. And so I thought that was really incredible. And then all of these Pacific Islands and whatnot walked out of the room, and it was an absolute media frenzy because they stood their ground and they said that we're not taking 300 billion. And it's not okay. And I mean, ultimately, in the end, it came to be. But if you guys are interested in more outcomes, I do recommend looking at a myriad of other sources. But yeah, so I guess one thing I really did note, especially when I attended COP27, was how interconnected the climate crisis is. Before I attended COP27, I was watching this one video from Vijay Prashad, who was speaking at the People's Plenary at COP26. And it was really moving. And I think that's when it actually clicked for me, how systemic the climate crisis is and how much work still has to go on, and how it's not an individual issue, it's actually such a systemic issue, and it's going back through colonization. He was stating that the countries in the global north condescend countries in the global south, and how they condescend them, saying that they're going to loan them money, loan them these loss and damage finance facilities, and say that we're helping you, then put a bunch of debt and tariffs onto it, and then expect them to be paid all back at a certain date. And he was saying that it's actually not their money. It's actually not money that they're loaning. It's just money that they're giving back, that they extracted from these countries during their centuries of colonialism, and how now this is the neo-colonialist mindset, and how this is exemplified in conventions like COP and all the other type of climate forums that are happening at international levels. So that's something I really noted before I went, and I really kind of took that on board, and so did SCAN when we were there, and it was in Egypt and Sharm el-Sheikh what also added on to it. But I guess one thing I also saw exemplified even in SCAN, in Climate Youth Artivist was born because of the pandemic, and we were kind of in a limbo of wondering what we can do, what should we do, and that's when we decided that we're going to look at the intersectionality of the climate crisis. So we went out into Cork City and painted a mural saying end direct provision and Black Lives Matter, and it kind of went from that. This was in 2020 when George Floyd was murdered. So we thought it was really important as well to kind of highlight that and put that on kind of a pedestal in that regard. And as well, end direct provision. So for anybody here who doesn't know, direct provision is a system we have in Ireland to bring, where we put asylum seekers and refugees for, it was meant to be only up to 6 months, but unfortunately, some people are staying there for up to 10 years, and it's a human rights issue in Ireland that's right in front of our noses, and nobody really talks about it. So we thought it was really important to just highlight that as well. But even in my Climate Youth Artivist, in SCAN, even in Somali Sustainability, we see that a lot of the people on the front lines of the climate movement, a lot of people on the front lines of any type of movement in history, we see it in any type of social justice movement, it's women and girls leading the fights. Women and girls are on the front lines of these issues, and we're shaping global and local environmental policies. We're seeing that these organizations are being founded by women, and we can see that with the incredible panel I have alongside me today, and how women-led innovation fosters climate resilience and adaptation, and it empowers other young women to take action and make a change. And I think it's just so beautiful. If I didn't feel empowered when I was 12, I wouldn't be here today, and so many others. I think when we see the kind of terms like girls support girls and whatnot, it's just so important, especially in the society today where women are meant to, or kind of sometimes are felt less than, in these huge international spaces where it's just a bunch of white men in suits, old white men in suits. It can feel really daunting at times, to be there as a young woman standing your ground, but then you see all these other incredible young activists, and you're like, wait, I deserve to be here, and so do they. This image in the background was at COP27, and these are incredible activists from all over the world. And the one in the very front, she's from Latin America, and she's led the fight in kind of gender justice and the gender justice women and gender constituency at COP. And I guess we see these challenges and solutions for gender equality in the climate movement. We see throughout the climate crisis how women are marginalized and how they're most affected alongside children and older people. And the gender disparities in climate policies and decision making is just astounding and must be looked at in depth. And we also see socioeconomic barriers limiting women's participation in these type of forums. Same with young people. It's very difficult to be attending these international forums or even like be able to go out into the streets, depending on the country that you live in. But I guess there's also, on the bright side, so many solutions for this. Economic and educational support for women, amplifying women's voice and activism, inclusive climate policies and leadership opportunities. There's so much that we can do and so much that has been done. As we can see here, I kind of just got a bunch of these images together just to show how women are leading the fights in the climate movement, especially in Ireland. And I think it's just so beautiful to actually just look back and see how much community can be fostered in these spaces and how much fun it can be as well, despite it being so daunting to be organizing such big protests or going to huge conferences as young women. It can also be so beautiful because you can find such community there. We can see here, this is at the very bottom is the YCJ. It was the YCJ conference at the end of 2024, and the panel is women. You can see at the beginning, at the front lines of this climate protest, it's a lot of young women. And then these are just some images from when I was younger. I think I was 12 years old in both of those pictures. And it's just really, it's kind of beautiful to just see how far that I've come and how far all my peers have come in this fight. And I really wouldn't have been able to do it if I didn't feel empowered by those around me. So I guess just to round it off, it's just, I think what's so important is that young women and young girls are feeling empowered to create change and empowered to fight for something that they believe in. And the ways that we can do this, especially as my focus, is just climate education for connection, empowerment, and networking and mobility, and just making sure that they understand that their voice is important and deserves to be listened to. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sumaya. That was really great and very inspiring and really interesting as well to hear your inside experience of COP that you described it very interestingly. Super. Thank you so much. And we're going to our next speaker, and please do pop your questions for Sumaya in the chat as well, and we can come back to those at the end as well. So next up we have Nina. If Nina, you would like to share your slides, please, and I'll do a little introduction for you, if that's okay. Super. So our next speaker is Nina Mbah. So Nina Mbah is a media producer and social entrepreneur who's seeking to create impact solutions using multimedia. Co-founder and CEO of Monoversal Multimedia in Nigeria, she focuses on using visual storytelling to drive empathy, education, and meaningful change. She's a graduate of the Nigerian University of Technology and Management, where she studied entrepreneurship, technology, and design. And she recently co-created the African Climate Stories. That's a mini documentary series. So Nina is particularly interested in new ways to use film and multimedia to tackle critical issues and finding innovative ways that can get them to reach people. So it looks like you're ready there. Are you good to go, Nina? You're on mute at the moment. If you just take yourself off mute. Excellent.
Oh, can you hear me?
Excellent. Over to you, Nina.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction, Catherine. My name is Nina Mbah. I introduce myself as a climate storyteller and an impact producer. I know there are kind of lots of new career roles in the climate space these days. So the concept of impact producing might not be something a lot of you are familiar with, but along the line during my presentation, you will be able to get more understanding of what impact producing is. I'm also the co-founder of African Climate Stories. So right on my screen, it says, every day we breathe, eat, and live off the earth. Our actions should not be causing it harm. So on the grand scheme of things, this is the reason why I do climate storytelling, right? Yet 2.2 million lives in Africa are lost to unhealthy environments with pollution, ecological deterioration, and extreme weather conditions, causing 80% of these deaths annually. So I always ask myself, if the environment is so important to our existence, if the environment is so important to our lives, why is it left so neglected, right? And that was what led me to founding the African Climate Stories. So sometime in 2021, I was done with a typhoid. It was like a life-threatening illness for me at that point in time. And just like for most people, when people are sick or when you find yourself in certain kind of negative situations, you always want to understand why. What is the cause of this? If not for anything else, people want to understand why in order to prevent the situation that they are in from happening again. And so that was the situation I was in sometime in 2021. While I was treating this typhoid, I was really trying to understand, because I had just moved to Lagos. I hadn't fallen sick for a very long time. I just moved to Lagos after the pandemic, and I was like hospitalized, like severely hospitalized. And at that moment, while trying to understand the reason for this, I realized that it was really a complex situation, a complex situation that had to do with the interconnection of lots of environmental problems. For example, flood washing in waste into waterways, waterways that people usually have access to. And in the course of discovering this, I was really sort of like excited to go into communities to let them know that this is what is happening. This is the cause of this is the cause of some of the illnesses that we are experiencing. Like last year, for example, in Lagos, we had the cholera outbreak, which is, if you still trace these things, is still connected to environmental factors, right? But I kind of met a very big challenge when I started meeting this community. When I started meeting and speaking with people in my community. And this major challenge, sort of like a paradox, is like, while droughts, flood, desertification, and many more glaring signs of climate change persist in Africa and vulnerable communities like mine, women, especially women, the importance of sustainability, especially women, recognize the importance of sustainability, but prioritize immediate survival needs of their families over long-term environmental concerns. And this sort of like hits me because the enthusiasm I was going to approach people to join me in finding solutions to these problems was sort of like drowned in this paradox, because it's not like they were not really interested in doing something about the problem. But at that point in time, it seemed like that problem wasn't the priority. There were in the chain of needs, it seemed like environmental problems was the least of their concern. And at that point in time, while I was discussing with a friend of mine, who is now also my partner, and a filmmaker, that was when the idea of using storytelling to see how we could tackle this problem came to us. We've been making films, entertainment films, and we've been using that to reach out to people on topics that are not as critical as this. So we started to have a rethink. Why not use these resources and connections and experiences that we have in making films to start making films that could kind of create awareness, kind of solve a problem, right? Not that there is anything wrong with entertainment films, but we felt we had that, we felt we sort of had that privilege, we had that resources to do something about the situation. We don't know if it was going to work, but when you are in such kind of situation, it's usually better to start with what you have, because most times when we lament of lack of money, lack of resources, we tend to forget the skills and probably the tools that are already in our possessions. And while we're waiting for funding, we do nothing, right? So at that point in time, we didn't really have any support. We don't have anything, but we had the experience. We had the connections. We had friends who could team up with us to create stories that could reach out to people in impactful ways. And that was what led to the whole concept of African climate stories. And for us, it was to bridge the gap between climate awareness and action. We didn't just want to raise awareness, because awareness was just one part of the solution, right? But what happens when you just raise awareness and you're not following up, you're not creating sort of like models to know if this awareness is leading to some kind of action, right? So for us, we are not just your usual storytelling platform, right? So for us, it's more of transforming awareness into action. So we're doing sort of like a lot of intersection between awareness creating and tracking the actions that comes with those things. So in this whole process, three major interventions were what we decided to really put our attention on, looking at the limited resources that we had. And the first one is just what I've introduced to you, which is storytelling, right? Storytelling, and for us, storytelling is more than just reporting. What we had seen that was more prevalent was journalistic form of reporting, right? Which we felt was not really getting the attention of the people we wanted to reach, right? So when we are looking at storytelling, we are looking at creative outlets, creative mediums. How can you reach out to, I don't know, maybe some of us from Africa who use shuttle buses. In Nigeria, we call them conductors. We call them conductors, some people call them downfall and all of that. So how do you communicate the concept of climate change or an environmental problem to such kind of people? Most of the climate discussions were happening at very, very high elite level, that a very huge number of people whose lives depends on those things were not even aware of what was going on or what they are saying. They can only feel the impact of these things, but they don't really understand those sort of kind of reporting. So for us, we're looking at easiest way to reach them. What kind of stories should we be using? What kind of visuals should we be using? Do we even have those qualifications in our team? Because when you want to go into storytelling is especially creative storytelling is a very vast, very vast industry. It's a very, very vast sector. So for us, we started with filmmaking, right? The second thing we went into was co-creation. And why did we go into co-creation? Like, for example, I just explained the concept of the downfall bus conductors and drivers. If you are trying to use a journalistic reporting to reach them, they won't. But when you put it in form of the music, and sing that music in a local dialect that they understand, they are more likely to listen and pay attention to it, and probably even make that music to be sung by somebody that they hold in very high regard. That person they hold in very high regard might not be a celebrity that is being noticed maybe worldwide. It could just be a local celebrity, but at that point in time, that local celebrity could actually make them change their behaviors. And so for us, those are the things that led us to co-creation, because we felt as just a very small team of filmmakers looking at the problem at hand, looking at the number of people and the number of lives that were affected, we were too small to really touch all of those people. And so we created what we call the African Climate Stories Fellowship. So for us, the African Climate Stories Fellowship is like a convening of artists and activists, right? So when we say activists is just like a general category where we put action takers, advocates, innovators, people who are really environmental organizations, people who are really doing the hands-on activities or taking the hands-on actions in their communities. Because what we were realizing when we were piloting our films was that we had some people in those communities who are making real efforts, but a lot of them were getting demoralized because their efforts were not being seen. They were not really attracting the kind of support that they need to scale or sustain their programs. On the other hand, we had people who used to be like us, amplifiers, who are really not using their talents and skills to do the dirty work of really going into communities and amplifying those voices. We're just doing the simple things of entertainment. So what we're trying to do was to be that bridge, bringing artists. So under artists, we have storytellers, multimedia content creators. They all fall under artists, musicians, and the rest. And other action takers fell under activists. And for us, it was more of a community of co-creations, right? Share with us the challenges you're encountering. A typical content creator who is creating entertainment content may not really be knowledgeable about climate change, but through a co-creation process with an environmental artist, they understand that, oh, so this is an issue, or this is a problem. Oh, I have about 100,000 followers that when I package this thing in form of this kind of content, I can reach out to them. Or I have access to this kind of people. I have access to this. I can create this thing in this format to get the attention of people in this way. And for us, that was one of the reasons why co-creation was a very big tool. And thirdly, was community building. Now these things are kind of interrelated: storytelling, co-creation, and community building. But for us, I think even if our community of storytellers were more of young people, most of the stories and most of the cooperation they were getting from these communities were from women, because most times when we go into these communities, women were usually the ones that we had more access to. They were usually more open-minded to share the problems. They were more in they were usually multitasking between care roles, supporting their family with like maybe their source of livelihood, like financial and economic support and all. So they were always more open to opportunities where they could get help, right? And so most of the stories that we were telling were kind of gender responsive, story inclined, and all. So through community building, we were able to create films, but not just creating films that end up maybe on the festivals, but community screenings. Because at the end of the day, if the target of that film is meant for a particular community, it means you have to make those people who you have made that film to see it. And this is where impact producing comes in. So we usually call this an impact campaign. When you finish making a film, you take the film to the communities that need to see them. Because sometimes what the mistakes that content creators make is they create this content for a particular audience, but they end up putting it on a platform where those audiences are not even accessible. Those audiences that they want to reach are not on those platforms. So during impact producing means understanding your community, and before you can understand your community, you have to have built sort of a relationship to understand, okay, this is the best way to reach these communities. So now, why is all of this important? Storytelling, co-creation, and community building. So in this context, I'll say women from climate vulnerable communities are empowered to understand how their daily economic survival is directly connected to their long-term environmental and financial sustainability through relatable stories and practical solutions. Now, their financial sustainability no longer look like something that is separate from the environmental challenges that they are passing through, because of the kind of examples of how we had to package these things through storytelling and content creation, so that they could understand that if the environment is healthy enough, if there's a way you could if you are even conscious and aware of what is happening in the environment, there are so many advantages to it. For example, why are vulnerable communities most affected during flooding? Because when you are paying so much attention to financial sustainability and surviving, maybe in terms of food and all of that, you could end up forgetting to build sort of like climate disaster resilience, because they are not prepared for it. The attention wasn't there. Most of the attention has been on, oh, let's eat and feed and survive today. Let's eat and feed and survive today. So when disasters and crises come, if they are not prepared, this is what makes it worse. So by the time we start bringing how the implications of this kind of things and explaining to them in the language they understand, we're able to reach out to lots of communities. And through this storytelling, content creation, and community building, we've been able to build over 1,000+ climate storytellers across Africa, and like it's on an annual basis, nothing less than at least 50 contents that are locally created for the specific niche of those communities' problem that are being created in within our storytelling network. So for call to action, I would like to first of all lean in on the call to action from the first speaker and the second speaker. Why? Because at the end of the day, all of these call to actions that we are making are all important, right? All of these things are sort of like reminders, and that is the whole concept of having an international day for something, an international day for this. Not like we don't know that these problems exist, but those days serve as a reminder to us to realize that if we are not paying much attention, this is just a reminder for us to realize that these are the reasons why we need to begin to pay much attention. So in addition to what the other speakers have said, I also add that on this International Women's Day, it should be another reminder to support initiatives that blend art and storytelling as tools in amplifying the voices of climate vulnerable women and their communities. And why is that? Because women's stories are climate stories, and the more we collaborate to tell them, the faster we accelerate action. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Nina. That was great. And again, another inspiring presentation. Thank you. So we'll go to Sara next. If you want to share your slides, Sara, and I'll give a little intro. Super, that looks good. So Sara Demissew is Self-Help Africa's Gender and Nutrition Advisor in Ethiopia. And she's a graduate of the University of Gondar in northern Ethiopia, where she studied medicine. She's a health professional whose experience over the past decade has included clinical practice, public health, project management, and gender-focused initiatives. She's led the integration of nutrition-sensitive and gender strategies into programs and managed multi-sectoral health and nutrition projects that are designed for women and girls. Sara's diverse experiences reflect her commitment to improving health outcomes, empowering vulnerable populations, and fostering sustainable development in a country where women and girls continue to lag behind men on such critical indicators as income, agriculture productivity, literacy, skills, and access to healthcare. So over to you, Sara, if you're ready.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Catherine. I'll be discussing about a little bit about myself and what we do in South Africa. So my name is Sara, as I've been introduced. I'm a gender and nutrition advisor in South Africa, Ethiopia. I'm a very compassionate humanitarian worker. And my background is I'm a public health specialist and a medical doctor with over 10 years of experience working in both humanitarian setup and medical setup. So what drove me from the medical practice into the public health or into the work of the health sector into the human sector is that through my practice working as a doctor, I have encountered many rural community women that have multiple challenges, like they can't afford medication, they can't afford their health expenses, so they have so many infrastructure, income issues. As the saying goes, prevention is better than cure. So I joined the humanitarian setup in order to empower women. So in South Africa, we have a brand called Family Life Model. In this Family Life Model, we have an approach in which we assist a family at a household level, in which we integrate approaches of gender, nutrition, and WASH into bringing social behavioral change in the community. In this Family Life Model, a mother, a father, and a youth in that household, they join together and discuss their social norms, gender barriers, nutritional barriers, WASH, and so many aspects, and financial barriers, and how they would overcome it. They would discuss it, and we have a very nice approach. We also focus on safeguarding and prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse and harm from occurring. We are very much accountable to the affected population, and we have a complaint feedback response mechanism in which the community have a say against our aid or our involvement in the community. They have the right to say, and we are accountable to the affected populations, and they have a voice. And we have also a social inclusive approaches in which elders and the most vulnerables are much engaged in our programs. In South Africa, we focus on livelihoods. We empower women, girls, and youth, and in livelihood improvement and income generation. Regarding nutrition, through our family life model, household nutrition security is improved and gender norms are overcome. You see men cooking, but in our culture, it's very difficult to overcome, men engaging in cooking. But through South Africa, we engage more men engage, and more youth are engaged in assisting their mother into the cooking episode. And even home gardening is one of the way we mitigate gender-based violence. Not only the nutritional aspect of home gardening, but also women don't have to walk long distances in order to fetch vegetables, in order to fetch onions, and so many gardening products. They just have to have it around their corner, around their house. Regarding rural saving account, we have rural saving and credit cooperatives where we empower women and youth to have access of saving and credit funds. This enables them to have a financial freedom in which they could untangle themselves from any barriers. We also empower women in energy efficient and climate smart stoves. In the era of in a climate changing world. Self-Help Africa provides a training for women and youth and for energy stove and climate smart stove production. We give them trainings, and that contribute to improving women health and overall achieving SDG goals. Through WASH, water sanitation and hygiene, Self-Help Africa empowers women and youth to have access to solar pumps, So even though there's no, in a very rural area where there's electricity is not available, we give them solar power so that they could pump water into their land, into their farms. And through this family life model, hygiene, sanitation practice are addressed. Could see women also using their water product that is not toxic to the kitchen gardening. So reusing mechanisms are also being taught. So a way of forward, it requires a multifaceted approaches that include legal reforms to ensure land rights and improve access to credit and financial service. Gender sensitive agriculture programs has to be incorporated more, and that we have to still battle against the cultural norms that perpetuate to gender inequalities, and policies has to support towards food security and improving towards their livelihood. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was great, and another great presentation. Super. So lots of reactions there for you. So thank you. So we'll go to Q&A now. That was our final presentation. So I'll start from the top, and if anyone would like to still enter questions into the chat, please feel free. But we'll start with a question for Wissal. So if that's okay, Wissal. So Paul asks, how much agency do women farmers have in Morocco? Do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah. It's a great question, because when we talk about empowering women, we talk about giving them also access to land or access to, rightful jobs when it comes to agriculture. So in Morocco specifically, and in a lot, it's similar in a lot of other African countries, women make up nearly half of Moroccan workforce, agricultural workforce, but they do have limited agency due to many issues like low wages, lack of land ownership, and also because of how the society is made today, minimal decision-making power. So many women would work without contract, would work without social security, etc. But there are programs that have great impact on women. A program around co-ops, creating women's co-ops and empowering those women through programs and helping them shift a little bit those challenges by giving them a bit of a financial independence and leadership also. So there is progress, but there's still very systemic barriers that remains, mainly coming from patriarchy and the non-ability to know. It's all about knowledge. A lot of women in rural areas don't even know that they have a decision-making power. So as all the great panelists said, it's about education and awareness, raising awareness, educating and empowering. But just one last thing to add, there is no systemic, let's say, specific issue that is linked to land ownership, etc. In Morocco per se. It's more about raising awareness and making women understand that they can.
Great, thank you. And one more question, I think, for you as well. Patricia says she would love to know a little bit more about the partnerships that you have in Senegal.
So yeah, in Senegal, we work with an FCDO program. It's a UK Foreign Affairs bureau, and we're working on getting smallhold farmers with a focus on women-led initiative, agricultural initiative, into the compensation market. So bridging that gap between this huge multi-billion compensation, carbon market, carbon credit, biodiversity credit, etc., and bringing this market to smallhold farmers via traceability, how to create practices, how to trace those practices, how to create those credits, etc. It's a long way to go because, again, this market was made by corporate for corporate. Really hard to get smallhold into it, but that's our aim with this program in Senegal.
Great, thank you. That sounds great as well. So then we have a question for Sumaya, if that's okay, Sumaya. So how do you recommend a young person gets involved today? What are your top tips?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just kind of reference it back to how I began. Just start where you are and just take action, talk about it with your friends, find your community. Like that's the way that I began. I mean, I found my community in kind of environmentalism, and then we created an organization, like create a grassroots organization, join a grassroots organization, join a global one, join a local one, just act where you are. And it doesn't have to be something crazy as like giving a speech to 10,000 people. It can just be like giving a little presentation to maybe your friends and then your classmates and then so on and so forth. But I guess just start talking to people and use whatever skills you have, because there's so many ways to actually get involved in the climate. If you like writing, there's a way to do it as a writer. If you like art, there's a way for creative artivism, and whatever kind of your niche is and whatever your skill sets are, there's a place for you in any type of form of advocacy and activism. So yeah.
Great, very inspiring. Thank you. And then we have a question for Nina. So from the content that you've produced, what kind of content have you found reaches people the most? Is it about the quality of the video, or is it more about authenticity? Do you focus on stories of people impacted or more stakeholders? There's multiple questions in one.
Okay, thank you. So I think for us, the content usually, the successes have been evaluated most times based on what was the goal of the content in the first place, right? Because sometimes if we just use reach and engagement only to judge the impact of the content, it may not really give us the answer that we need. But in general, or in summary, I think authenticity has always been the first or the major thing before even quality. But quality is what actually draws people to even listen to you in the first place. So no matter how authentic your story is, no matter how authentic it is, people don't get to know it's authentic if you don't draw them in first. And so that's why it's really very important to pay attention to quality. Most times we try to emphasize it, pay attention to audio quality, because most times the quality of the audio is even 70% more important than the video, because sometimes you see very beautiful video, but the audio takes people away. They don't, people don't have the patience because the audio is not clean enough to for them to take their time and listen. So for me, I would say both pay attention to the quality, but we won't rule out the place of authenticity as well. They are both very important. For different audiences, then I will highlight like three key content parts. So when we really want to go into communities that have to do with a mixture of demographies, especially age demography, films work the best, right? And films that are either subtitled, dubbed, or spoken in that particular language or local context, right? Something else that works is visuals, like art that people can, art that are really, how do I put it? Art that are thought-provoking, or that are not common, as simple as using waste to create something else, makes people to rethink, oh, I throw these things away, but now it has been created in this form. You don't really have to always say something, right? You just understand what is the goal. When you understand the goal, then you can ask yourself, what is the best tool? So for example, we've been to a community where we didn't showcase anything. We didn't really say much. We just showed them different ways waste has been repurposed, just because we want to drive the message of waste management, waste recycling, waste upcycling. So you just show them examples, right? Because sometimes action speaks louder than words. Then for children, I think animation has worked wonders for us. We have collaborated with a lot of animation studios. And those animations have, like, our major animation studio partner is Spunky Tunes. You see a lot of Spunky Tunes animated video online. Spunky Tunes is in about 8 local African dialects already. And I think through Spunky Tunes, we've seen how to get to, how to reach to people like a particular demographic, usually those less than 7, less than 6. We've seen how animation has drawn them, especially when it comes to educational content, things that want to do with just simple storytelling that just want to pass a key message. We've used animations and animations, films, showcases, like physical experience showcases. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And one of the attendees has just asked if you could perhaps pop some of your some links to some of your videos in the chat. That would be great. So, and then there's a question for Sarah. We have a couple actually. So one from Paul. Can you explain more on the land rights, Sarah? Paul says he thought that all the land in Ethiopia was owned by the government.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a crucial question. When I say land issue, I meant to say that there is social barriers and cultural barriers in which a woman or a girl or a youth cannot own family ownership. If her mother or father died, they cannot have a land that is from their families. She can't own it because she's a woman, or because of the cultural barriers, she can't own it, but it's only meant for men. There are regions in Ethiopia in which there is a cultural barrier. So through our FLM, through our family life model, we discuss such an issues of social barriers, cultural barriers, and we discuss through all those issues, and they are, you know, once the community owns it, once the community understands the harmful impact, they literally would unleash all those behaviors. And that's what I meant to say, land issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That makes sense. Thanks so much. And you just mentioned also the family life model. So there was a question on that as well for you. What are the greatest barriers in the implementation of the family life model, and how are they managed?
Oh, very, very nice question, because if for any kind of social behavioral change to occur, it's a very steady, and it takes long time. So one of the challenges through implementing, having social behavioral change to be seen, and those positive outweighing the negative behaviors, it takes time. So one of those development projects in Self-Help Africa, Ethiopia, our development projects range from 2 to 5 years, and 10 years, and so on. So the barriers to family life model is that to see a very impactful social behavioral change, it takes time. You just can't eradicate all those unhealthy or barriers, social, cultural norm barriers within 1 year projects. So one of the challenge is short project lifespan is one of the challenges in order to see a very impactful. But despite this, community usually, if with the authenticity and the nature of this discussion, they usually, you know, after sessions, you get a better and better outputs, and women are empowered, and you could see the financial gains through the Rusako communities. And I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks. That's great. We could talk a lot more about this, but there's one question actually, Sarah, for you as well, from Valentina, just popped in the chat. So can you tell us more about how Self-Help Africa applies the intersectionality in agricultural practices for development? She says it's important to shed light on the gender power relations that mediate farmer engagement with agriculture.
And in Self-Help Africa, the intersection between agriculture and women empowerment or gender equality is that we mainstream in every project that we have, we mainstream gender equality, women empowerment, and leadership roles. So with every project areas that we have currently, we empower the engagement of balanced gender equality, which means, for example, out of, let's say, 10,000 beneficiaries that we have, 50% have to be women. So starting from the project designing up to implementation, up to the monitoring and evaluation phase, we make sure that our projects are gender sensitive and socially inclusive. And that's how we incorporate in every agricultural and dairy and climate smart projects. We are very sensitive from the project proposal development up to implementation, up to closure. And we even make sure that after projects are phased out, the exit strategy of our projects are women empowered, and the community has to empower it. And it's you know, we also assess the impact of what we have done so far, and we try to learn from our impacts and try to really empower. And I wish you could come to Ethiopia and see all our impacts. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that Valentina's just followed up on, but I think that addressed your question, Valentina. I did spot another question earlier on in the chat, but I think we talked about that. It was related to the family life model, and the sort of you talked about the time it takes, obviously, for change to happen, and that it doesn't. That often the project cycles don't allow for it. So I think we have covered all the questions. So just to say thank you to all our speakers again, and very inspiring presentations, and thank you to everyone attending. Hopefully all the speakers have seen this. Lots of comments for you as well in the chat. Everyone was very appreciative of your insights and for sharing those with us. So thank you again, and thank you for everyone for joining. Have a lovely day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.